The sound of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major filled our basement, my fingers dancing across the ancient upright piano I'd rescued from a church dumpster. It was 4:30 a.m., the only time I could practice without my parents knowing, or so I thought. The basement door crashed open. My father's heavy boots thundered down the stairs, each step making my heart race faster. I jerked my hands from the keys, but it was too late. "What did we tell you about this garbage?" His voice was deadly quiet. The smell of whiskey hung heavy in the air. "I'm sorry, Dad," I whispered, slowly backing away from the piano. I was just what, Michael? Just wasting time? Just throwing away your future?" He grabbed my wrist, his grip like iron. "How many times do we have to teach you this lesson?" My mother appeared at the top of the stairs, her thin face illuminated by the dim light. Instead of helping, she just watched, arms crossed. "We told you music is for rich people's kids. You need to focus on real work." I was 17, just 3 months away from a piano competition that could win me a full scholarship to Juilliard. I'd been practicing in secret for 2 years, working extra shifts at the grocery store to pay for lessons with Ms. Chen, who believed in me enough to teach me at dawn before her regular students. "Please," I begged, seeing the hammer in his other hand. He must have grabbed it from his toolbox by the door. "I'll stop, I promise." "No," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You won't. Because you're stubborn, just like your grandmother. She filled your head with these ridiculous dreams, bought you that first keyboard. Look where music got her, dying alone in a trailer park." He forced my right hand flat against the piano lid. "This is for your own good, son." The first strike shattered my pinky finger. I screamed, trying to pull away, but his grip was too strong. The second hit broke my ring finger. Through my tears, I saw my mother turn away, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. "Stop, please," I sobbed, but the hammer fell twice more. When he finally released me, 4 of my fingers on my right hand were broken. The pain was excruciating, but worse was watching him take the hammer to the piano keys, destroying them one by one. "There," he said finally, stepping back to survey his work. "Now you can focus on learning the family business. Auto repair is good enough for me. It's good enough for you." My mother finally spoke from the stairs. "Clean this mess up before you go to school. And Michael? Don't bother going to that competition next month. No son of mine is going to waste his life being a performing monkey." They left me there, cradling my shattered hand, surrounded by broken piano keys that looked too much like scattered bones. Somehow, I made it to school that morning. Ms. Chen took one look at my swollen fingers and burst into tears. "We have to report this," she insisted, reaching for her phone. "No." I grabbed her wrist with my good hand. "They'll just make things worse. Please, I only have a few months until I'm 18. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but we're going to the hospital. Now." 6 hours later, I sat in her car outside the emergency room, my right hand encased in a cast. The doctor had asked questions, of course, but I'd stuck to my story about catching my hand in a car door. They didn't believe me, but they couldn't prove otherwise. "The competition," I said numbly. "I can't." "Stop," Ms. Chen interrupted. "Your father broke your fingers, but he didn't break your spirit. We have 3 months. Your left hand still works." "What are you saying?" She pulled out some sheet music from her bag. Morris Ravel wrote a piano concerto for the left hand in D major for Paul Wittgenstein, a concert pianist who lost his right arm in World War I. It's one of the most beautiful and challenging pieces ever written. I stared at the complex notes. "You think I could learn this in 3 months? I think you have to try. The competition committee will make an exception once I explain. And Michael?" She waited until I met her eyes. "This piece isn't just music, it's a statement. Every note says I will not be broken." Looking down at my cast, I thought about my grandmother, who taught me my first notes before she died. About the hours of secret practice, the dreams of something beyond my father's garage and the life he planned for me. "When do we start?" Miss Chen smiled, starting her car. "Right now. And Michael? Your father thought he was destroying your future. Instead, he just wrote the opening chapter of your comeback story. I didn't know then that this was only the beginning, that in 3 months I would step onto a stage and show the world what resilience really means." Every morning for the next 3 months, I met Ms. Chen at 4 a.m. in the music room of St. Mary's Church. She convinced Father Roberts to let us use their grand piano, spinning a story about my right hand being injured in a car accident. Learning to play with only my left hand was like learning to walk again. Hours of frustration turned into small victories. My fingers stretched across impossible intervals, my wrist aching as it carried the weight of both melody and harmony. At home, I kept my cast on long after the doctor said it could come off. It was my shield, making my parents believe they'd won. My father would pat my shoulder approvingly when I helped him at the garage after school, my hands covered in grease instead of dancing across keys. "See," he'd say, "this is honest work. None of that artistic nonsense." What he didn't know was that every oil change, every tire rotation was rehearsal in disguise. My left hand was growing stronger, more precise. Even turning wrenches became a rhythm exercise. 2 weeks before the competition, disaster struck. My mother was cleaning my room when she found the competition registration form hidden between my mattress. "What is this?" she screamed, waving the paper in my face when I came home. "Are you still on this music nonsense?" Before I could answer, my father stormed in. He grabbed the paper, reading it with darkening eyes. The National Young Artists Competition? He crumpled the form. "After everything we did to stop this madness?" I stood my ground, heart pounding. "You broke my fingers, not my dreams." The slap came fast, but I'd expected it. What I hadn't expected was Ms. Chen's voice from our doorway. "Touch him again," she said calmly, holding up her phone, "and the video I'm recording goes straight to the police." My parents froze. Ms. Chen walked in, positioning herself between us. "Michael is performing in 2 weeks," she announced. "He's playing a piece specifically written for one hand, thanks to your intervention." Her voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "And if anything happens to him before then, if he gets mysteriously injured or disappears, the police will have the footage of what you did to his hand." My father's face turned purple. "You're blackmailing us?" "No," she smiled. "I'm protecting my student. Michael will perform. You will do nothing to stop him. After that, he turns 18 and your control over his life ends." She turned to me. "Get your things. You're staying at my house until the competition." I ran upstairs, throwing clothes into a bag while my parents argued with Ms. Chen downstairs. When I came down, my mother was crying and my father was sitting heavily in his chair, looking deflated. "You'll regret this," he called as I walked out. "When you're starving in some city, playing for pennies on the street, you'll wish you'd listened." I paused at the door. "No, Dad. The only thing I regret is that you never came to hear me play." The next 2 weeks were intense. I practiced morning to night, Ms. Chen bringing in other music teachers to listen and critique. The Ravel Concerto was more than music now, it was my declaration of independence. The day before the competition, Ms. Chen found me at the piano at midnight, still practicing. "Enough," she said gently. "You're ready." What if I'm not? What if they're right? I stared at my left hand. Maybe this is crazy. She sat beside me on the bench. "Do you know why Ravel wrote this piece? Because Wittgenstein refused to give up. He could have quit music after losing his arm, but instead he inspired one of the most beautiful pieces ever written." She touched my shoulder. "Sometimes our greatest music comes from our deepest wounds." I thought about my broken fingers, now healed but still carrying the memory of that hammer. "Tomorrow," I said softly, "I'm playing for that scared kid in the basement and for every other person who's been told their dreams don't matter." Miss Chen smiled. "Then you're ready." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my grandmother, who'd sold her wedding ring to buy my first keyboard. About those early morning practices in the basement. About the sound of breaking fingers and piano keys. Tomorrow, I would either prove my parents right or prove them wrong. There would be no middle ground. But as I finally drifted off, I realized something important. I was no longer playing to prove anything to them. I was playing for myself, for the music that had saved me, for the dreams that wouldn't die no matter how hard they tried to kill them. The next morning, as we drove to the competition venue, Miss Chen handed me an envelope. "Your grandmother left this for you," she said. "She gave it to me before she died, made me promise to give it to you when you were ready." Inside was a simple note and a brass key. The brass key belonged to a storage unit. The note read, "For when you're ready to fly, my little musician. They can't cage your music forever. Love, Grandma." But there was no time to investigate. I tucked both items into my jacket pocket as we arrived at the competition hall. The place was packed with well-dressed parents, prestigious music teachers, and nervous contestants clutching sheet music. I was the only one performing with one hand. As I waited backstage, I heard whispers. "That's the boy playing Ravel's left-hand concerto. Did you hear what happened to his right hand? Such a shame." The judges had already been briefed about my situation, though Ms. Chen had kept the true story private. As far as they knew, it was an accident. Then I heard familiar voices that made my blood freeze. Where is he? Where's my son? My parents had come. I peeked through the curtain to see them arguing with an usher. My father was wearing a clean suit, the one he kept for funerals, and my mother had on her church dress. They looked out of place among the cultured crowd, but they were here. Before I could process this, the announcer called my name. The walk to the piano felt like a mile. Under the bright lights, I could see my parents being seated in the back row. My father's face was unreadable. My mother was crying silently. I sat at the gleaming grand piano, took a breath, and placed my left hand on the keys. The first notes of Ravel's concerto filled the hall. My left hand began its dance, playing the work of melody and harmony that usually required two hands. Each note was a story, the story of a boy practicing in darkness, of broken fingers and unbroken dreams, of a grandmother who believed and a teacher who wouldn't give up. The piece built to its crescendo, my left hand flying across the keys, creating a sound so full that people in the audience were leaning forward, trying to see if I was really playing with just one hand. In that moment, I wasn't performing for the judges. I was playing for the kid in the basement, for my grandmother, for every dream that refused to die. The music poured out of me like a river breaking through a dam, unstoppable and wild and free. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the hall erupted. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Through my tears, I saw Ms. Chen beaming, her own face wet with tears. And in the back row, my parents sat stunned. My father's face had crumpled, his shoulders shaking. My mother had her hands over her mouth. I won first place. After the ceremony, as people were congratulating me, my parents approached. My father looked older somehow, diminished. That was, he started, then stopped. I didn't know. I never knew you could. Make something beautiful? I finished for him. Even with broken fingers? He flinched at the reminder of what he'd done. Son, save it, I said quietly. I'm 18 tomorrow. Ms. Chen helped me get an early admission to Juilliard. Full scholarship. I touched my right hand, where the scars still lingered under the surface. You tried to break my music. Instead, you made it stronger. My mother stepped forward. Please, Michael, we were wrong. So wrong. Can you ever forgive us? I looked at them, really looked at them. My father's callous hands that had wielded the hammer, my mother's silence that had allowed it. But I also saw something new, recognition. They finally saw me. Forgiveness takes time, I said finally. Like healing bones. Like learning to play with one hand when life breaks the other. But maybe we can start with this. I handed them 2 tickets to my first official recital, scheduled for next month at Carnegie Hall's smaller venue, part of my competition prize. Front row, I said. Come hear what your son can do with one hand and an unbroken spirit. Later that night, Ms. Chen drove me to the storage unit. Inside, we found my grandmother's old piano, the one she'd sold her wedding ring to buy. On top was another note. Music isn't just in the fingers, my darling boy, it's in the heart, and they can never break that. I touched the keys gently with both hands, my strong left and my healing right. Tomorrow, I would begin a new chapter at Juilliard. But tonight, in this storage unit, surrounded by my grandmother's love and Ms. Chen's pride, I played a simple melody. This time, I used both hands, because sometimes healing means playing through the pain, one note at a time, until you find your way back to the music that saved you. And in the end, that's what this story is really about, not the breaking, but the healing, not the silence, but the song that follows.